right, guys, and we are now live with Phil Jones, and this is Extra Point.
All right, guys, welcome into another week of talking high school football. We are live, coming to you live from Mellow Mushroom here in Valdosta. I want to thank everybody for joining into tonight's weekly podcast, brought to you by Dr. Kevin Collins, the Houston Clinic, and our friends at Pepsi Cola Valdosta. I think for now the third or fourth week, grateful to have joining me is our owner of ITG Next. It's Mark Dykes. Mark, how you doing? Let's see, Mark, I'm having some difficulty. Well, it might help if I put my headphones on. Oh, I do have my headphones on. Okay. I was going to say, Mark, I'm not able to hear you, man, but let's see if our man Flint can get that fixed back at ground zero. So, Mark, can you hear me? All right, so I'm having some difficulty picking up Mark on the audio. So
yeah, Phil, I want to butt in here a little bit. I think that's on Mark's end. I just want to think it's all clear on our end. We're waiting on Mark. I think Chat, he has a new mic today. I think he's trying to get where he can sound a little better for you guys, but I think he's still trying to figure that out. But it sounds good on our end. I think that's just on his end maybe. So if you just want to start us off, Phil, we can go and we'll get that worked out.
Okay. Yeah, and Mark, as soon as we get those issues taken care of, just chime on in, brother. We'll welcome you in. So what we're going to talk about tonight is – yeah, there you go. We got you.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know.
Yep.
It's perfect.
Not on the the mic there. So
got you loud and perfect, Mark.
Technical problem.
It always seems to happen, no matter what level you're at. Even the pros have technical difficulties, as they say. But Mark, welcome into the show. I was mentioning during the introduction. Now I think this is your third or fourth straight week for joining me, man. We're having a blast talking high school football.
A lot of fun. Great time of the year. We're football just around the corner, so a lot to talk about today. We've got some big season opening games, as well as this new transfer rule that everyone has been talking about.
Man, I tell you, speaking of which, we're going to get into that tonight. You guys bear with me. I'm going to bring up the show here, but so I can chat with you guys. And speaking of chatting with you guys know the drill. For those of you that have been with us before, we want your comments. We recommend you talk to us. We highly suggest that you talk to us because you are as much a part of the show as Mark and myself is. So if you're new to the show, well, that's pretty much how we do things. We'd love to have your input. We're not just going to sit here and talk to you, but we want to talk with you. So by all means, let us know where you're checking in from. Like David Woods checking in from Grayson, Ram Country. Man, you know that those folks up there are excited about some football, aren't they, Mark?
Great team. We just put out a video. I encourage everybody to go check that video out we did about Grayson's state championship last year. I know everyone's excited. They have a lot of people backfield. They're going to be very good again this year.
No doubt. And, of course, that's one of the things we've been talking about. You guys can go back and check out my story that I wrote about, and I think Mark agrees with me, 2025 being the year of the repeat. And I don't know if it's going to be every defending state champion, Mark, but I tell you, I think a number of the state champions from 2024 have got a really good shot of repeating in 2025, and that's certainly right there at the top of that list is Grayson.
Many of them do, as you mentioned. I was up at Grayson. I think I'd mentioned this before a couple of weeks ago, but they have 170 kids, 10 through 12. That's not including freshmen. 170 kids. You can build depth with those kinds of numbers. Look for them to make a big run this coming year.
Absolutely. Want to say hello before we get into it to a couple of people. Of course, first and foremost, Thomas County Central's number one fan, Obadiah Farley, is checking in. What's up, Obadiah, my man? He is a loyal follower of the show, friend of ours. We appreciate you, Obadiah. Kelly Mitchell says, go Brooks County Trojans. Well, I tell you, they have got a big season opener. And Mark, well, season openers are one of the things we're going to talk about tonight, right?
We are. We get started off. How about Brooks County?
Yeah, Brooks County going to open up with Thomasville Now, these two teams opened up last year, and I think it shocked some people that Thomasville, of course, Coach DeLay's program, took care of business against Brooks County. And I tell you, Mark, these two teams, Brooks and Thomasville, they're both going to be favored to win a state championship. There's Brooks, another one of these teams that didn't win a state championship last year, but I think they've got a good chance of going back to the state title game. They got a new quarterback that come in from Cairo, formerly by way of Thomas County Central, but that's Bryce Puckett, who's come in, transferred in. Of course, you've already got a pretty good quarterback there at Brooks County and Junior Burris. So going to be interesting to see if there's a quarterback controversy there. The way I look at that is you can't go wrong. You got two great quarterbacks. You went from one really good quarterback to two great quarterbacks, Mark. So that's the way I view that kind of situation.
Well, they got to have a good quarterback to get it to that talented receiving corps they have, for sure. Brooks County's got a lot of talent, a lot of skilled players. They're looking for a big year, as is Thomasville. Great rivalry game for South Georgia when those two get together.
Yeah, without a doubt. So that is one of the season openers that we're going to talk about tonight. So Brooks County, again, taking on Thomasville. Now, we just talked about Brooks County's quarterback situation, and let's talk about Thomasville's quarterback situation. Cam Hill. Mark, we were doing the game, I guess this would have been 3 years ago. We were doing the game Brooks County, and I believe it was Thomas County Central, Thomasville and Thomas County Central, or it was Thomasville and Cairo. We did two Thomasville games that year. That was the first year of our ITG Next Game of the Week, which, of course, we'll continue to do again this year. But, Mark, that game, you had Thomasville starting quarterback. He was the Beckham kid, and I can't remember his first name, but he went down with an injury, and in comes a true freshman, green as could be, Mark, and it was Cam Hill, true ninth grader. He didn't do a bad job at all, but, again, he was green, ninth grader, true freshman, trying to, being thrust in there to the wolves, so to speak. Well, let's fast forward now, Mark, this will be 4 years later. He has developed into one of the top quarterbacks in the state of Georgia. Of course, again, talking about Cameron Hill. And, again, that's what makes that season opener between those two teams contenders for the state championship, Mark, led by two, could be three, great quarterbacks. Thomasville's Cam Hill going up against Brooks County's either Puckett or Burris.
One thing you can count on, that game will be a war. It'll be a physical game, pound for pound. Both those teams, they'll get after it with the physicality standpoint. But that's all South Georgia teams. I may be a little bit biased, but I think the game's just a little more physical in South Georgia now. All my Atlanta friends don't get mad at me, but I think it's just a little different, right? You got these kids from a young age wanting to run out on their home team's field. That will be a war. Great matchup. Love that. It's hard for me to pick a winner in that one, Phil. What do you think?
Well, I tell you, Mark, it really is. There's a lot going to happen this offseason, continuing to develop these players. Brooks County, Mark, you mentioned it earlier. They've got the receiving core. George Lamont Jr. He is already being looked at by pretty much every Division I program in the United States. And I think George still has got another year, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's just a junior.
Yeah, he does. He has another year. It's kind of scary. I mean, kids are just bigger today, faster. I don't know what it is. I can't figure it out, but a lot different from back in my day. But he's the real deal. Everybody's looking at this kid. He wants to win a state championship. They got so close last year. They want to get the season started off, like to get a win over the crosstown, or I'm not going to say cross-county rival, if you will. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and Mark, here's the thing about it. Speaking of that cross-county deal, so we know that Thomasville and Coach DeLay, we know that they are pretty much sick and tired of living in the shadow of Coach Rogers in Thomas County Central. Now, hats off to what Coach Justin Rogers, has been able to do with that Thomas County Central football program, okay? Not taking anything away from them, and they're going to be really good again this year. But, Mark, you know that Thomasville and Coach DeLay, they would like to step up and say, hey, this city's big enough for 2 championship caliber schools. Mark, you agree?
I do agree. Yeah. I don't think they're going to get overlooked. I think they're upgrading their facilities as well. We all know Thomas County Central has a lot of great things going on there with their facilities. So Thomasville for sure wants to make a name for themselves, and they have a lot of tradition in that program going back many, many years.
They really do. Mark, you know, speaking of tradition, and I said this a few years back, this was before the rise of Thomas County Central, and this was years before Coach DeLay came in to take over Thomasville. But I remember, I think it was when Leroy Ross was the head coach of Thomasville. And Mark, I remember saying, of all the schools in Georgia, especially South Georgia, you know, it's important that Thomasville, just the city, okay, it's important that Thomasville has good football, because that town, Mark, those programs, both of those programs, such tradition and history. I mean, when you think of South Georgia football, sure, we think of Valdosta, Mark, but Thomasville, William Andrews,
Charlie,
go ahead.
No, Charlie Ward's at TCC.
Yes. No, you're right. But that's Thomas. That's what I'm saying. That's the city of Thomasville. And Mark, the 2 stadiums are almost identical. About a mile separated right there on Highway 84, the stretch running through the city of Thomasville.
Not maybe half a mile, if
right.
That's how close they are. Yeah.
So it's important, Mark, that football rises up in the city of Thomasville, and it has, you know, since I made that statement. So certainly that's going to be a good one to take a look at, though, talking about season openers, as Brooks County and Thomasville. Brooks County trying to avenge the season opening loss. But again, Coach DeLay, give him credit for the job that he's done. He's certainly brought back the pride and a winning tradition there at Thomasville, Mark.
He has that. And speaking of opening games, how about Cockwood and Benedictine?
Yeah, that's another one that's going to be good. Hey, I got to mention this real quick. Jeffrey Rowland and their team is going to be involved in another season opener, Mark, that we're going to talk about. Warner Robins fan, Jeffrey Rowland, you're going to get a kick out of this, guys. Jeffrey Rowland up in Warner Robins says, I'm driving my car with my pork skins and listening to Uncle Phil with his pig skins. Go Demons. Jeffrey Rowland is a big Warner Robins fan. I just got a kick out of that. But Warner Robins is going to be taking on Lee County. This will be now, I think, the fourth or fifth straight year those 2 teams have opened up. But getting back to the game, Mark, you just mentioned, Benedictine Colquitt. This will be the first time Benedictine has ever visited the Colquitt County Packers. Now, they made a trip way, way back many, many moons ago to take on the Moultrie Packers, okay? But this will be the first meeting between Colquitt County and Benedictine. And this game has got everything you could want. We talk about tradition and winning programs, Mark. You're going to be hard-pressed to find that much tradition on the field at the same time when you talk about these 2 teams.
One thing's for sure, Benedictine won't sneak up on anybody.
No.
They really should have beat Buford last year. They didn't quite get it done.
Right.
But I do believe it'll be a tall task to defeat the Packers in the hog pen. Don't know that I see that one happening, but I do know that they won't sneak up on Colquitt. Coach Calhoun will have the Packers ready to go.
You know, and listen, I don't doubt that one bit. I hear people, saying this, of course, from the series that I had started about these season openers, and our guy Flint has followed that up, posting some follow-ups to that with some great graphics. And, we put that up a couple of days ago with Flint asking the question, hey, who do you think's got it? And, a lot of people said, of course, Colquitt County, which, is no surprise. But let me warn everybody, Benedictine, by the way, in the last decade, those 2 teams have combined, Mark, for 6 state championships. I think it was 2014. They both won state championship, different classifications. But you're talking about a lot of trophies in just a short amount of time between those two teams. But you've got Stephen Cannon, Mark. He's the quarterback for Benedictine. He went down last year in the game against Ware County, and Benedictine was never the same. In fact, they were leading Ware County. Stephen Cannon goes out with an injury, season-ending injury, and changed the scope of that game, Mark, and changed the whole season. But he's back, and you've got LaDamian Guyton, who came over from Savannah Christian, 5-star edge. He's now at Benedictine. You got Bubba Frazier, 4-star running back, wide receiver, true definition of an athlete. I tell you, there's a lot of talent on the cadet side. Now, Colquitt County, you've got Cohen Lawson, who was a freshman last year. Stayed injured, Mark, most of the year. Couldn't really get going. But you've got him coming up at quarterback. And watch out for this name. Michael Lawson is his name. He is a true freshman, but he is getting a lot of attention, Mark. He's one of the kids that we mentioned in our ones to watch for the class of 2028. So, again, not surprising. Here we are talking about the quarterback situation, but a lot of talent between both these teams, Mark. But I think you said it right. Jeff Herron said that Colquitt County was the toughest place for a team to go in and play, and that might be the difference maker here, Mark. What say you?
That's saying a lot coming from him because he's certainly been in a lot of different venues. Again, I think it'll be hard to beat the Packers at home. Benedictine's a very good team. They're not going to sneak up on anybody. Be a great game, though. Lee County, Warner Robins, boy, they've had some great games over the past couple of years. There'll be a lot of talent on the field during that game. Of course, Lee County, hard to replace some of the talent they lost last year, but Coach Fabrizio does seem to reload.
Oh, he really does. I think, Mark, we have covered that Lee County Warner Robins game. We did it last year. I think we have made that our opening game on our game of the week for, I think, 3 straight years. I mentioned earlier they have played, I think, 4 or 5 consecutive years. Great rivalry, Mark. It's a non-region game. It's Middle Georgia versus South Georgia. 2 great programs. But I tell you, that this is one that I think would satisfy the football palate of any football fan anywhere, regardless, even if you're not a fan of either of those teams.
Certainly will do that. Lee County, those guys go at it real hard in the weight room. Very physical team. So does Warner Robins. I view everything south of Atlanta, South Georgia. The teams in Houston County are no different than the teams on 84. Very physical football team. They'll be ready to play another big game. Hard to pick that game, but you may have to tip your hat to the home team.
Mark, I know you've dealt a good bit with Shane Sams, the head coach of Warner Robins. I've dealt, we both have, but, of course, no secret that Dean Fabrizio is a friend of mine. He's a friend of ITG Next. We've done a lot with Lee County as well. Mark, you mentioned at the onset of the broadcast, they lose a lot. They lose Weston Bryant. Of course, they lose maybe the most explosive running back we've seen in some time, and it is Monte Crow Ma. What do you think about this game, Mark?
Lee County still got a lot of talent.
Yes.
Have a couple of guys on defense that are all world, 4 or 5-star kids. Again, Coach Fabrizio reloads. Coach Sams does an outstanding job. He's an energetic guy. I've had the opportunity to go up and interview him multiple times, cover multiple of their games up there. In fact, I think it was a couple years ago, the Warner Robins Northside game, which is just a classic rivalry.
Yes.
They got down but came from behind. The game was back and forth, but they ended up winning that game. A lot of energy on that sideline. Again, you can rest assured they'll be ready to play.
Absolutely. Mark, let's check out who's watching the show, and let's give some shout-outs here. I wanted to mention, I mentioned Jeffrey Rowland was checking out the show. We got Nancy Sullivan-Burrell checking out for the game from Worth County. Princess Coleman, Northside Warner Robins fan, Mark, check this out. Michael Baxter says, good evening, Phil and crew. I'm back in Seattle, Washington. Just coming off a cruise to Alaska. Michael is a big Milton Eagles fan, Mark.
Well, he's got to be happy. Milton's looking for a three-peat.
Mark, I think they may get it.
Plus,
I know we talked a good bit about that last week, but go ahead.
Plus, he's coming off a cruise. I mean, what more can you ask for?
Christopher Sloan, syrup maker fan, checking in. Are there any Southern teams in your opinion? And Mark, you and I'll tackle this question. Christopher Sloan wants to know, are there any Southern teams in your opinion that have a chance of winning a championship? Mark, I think it's kind of ironic you asked that question because you really started off talking on your side, about tonight's live stream, talking about the caliber of football that's played here in Southern Georgia versus North Georgia. Now, look, I think there's this perception that North Georgia is going to run away with it. I don't think that's the case. Mark, what do you think? I mean, we've talked a little bit so far about some of these teams in Southern Georgia. Colquitt County's one of them. And but what do you think to answer Chris's question?
Well, you have Brooks County. We just spoke about them. They're going to be very good.
Yep.
Thomas County Central will be good. Lee County will be good. Coffee
Bingo.
Will be good. All those teams. Of course, I don't want to leave anyone out here, but those come to – look, I don't think you can ever count out of Valdosta or Lowndes either,
Bingo.
just to be honest. They could get on a run. I've noticed where just I think this week, Lowndes has an offensive lineman that got offered by Georgia.
Yep.
And another lineman that got offered by Louisville.
And another one by Boston College.
Look, I've said it a million times, in the trenches where it's won and lost. So it looks like Lowndes, they have a very talented quarterback. Don't underestimate what any of these teams could do if they get on a run. Also, Clinch County.
Yep.
I know they'll be competing with Brooks, but either of those teams could win that state championship. So, yes, 100%. I feel like there's some South Georgia teams that will be in the mix for sure.
Yeah, that's strong there, Mark. That's the best 5 minutes of the show right there, talking about those teams and talking about all of the strength from all of those teams. And, Mark, you're spot on. I mean, every one of those teams you just mentioned has got a bona fide reason for claiming a chance to win a state championship this year.
Well, they do, and I don't want to leave out. I know there's a lot of questions with Camden. They have a new coach, but they always have talent there. And then Ware County.
Yeah.
Coach Strickland's done a great job there. He's won a state championship. Again, all these teams are very talented and will have an opportunity to make a run. You just got to start winning at the right time. You got to come together at the right time at the end of the year, and you throw your record out once the playoffs start. Doesn't matter how many games you've won or lost. If you can make the playoffs and are playing good, who knows what can happen.
Great point. Speaking of point, you're watching Extra Point with Phil Jones, Mark Dykes joining me. We are live here at the Valdosta Mellow Mushroom. Big thanks to our friends hosting us here at Mellow Mushroom. Listen, if you're out and about here in Valdosta, come on and join me. We got a big, large pizza sitting here, and got more than enough to share. In fact, Mark, Rosser Sutherland up in Marietta, who is a big Marietta Blue Devil fan. Rosser says, Phil, can you send me some pizza up to exit 263 on I-75?
Phil, somebody needs to come help you eat some of that pizza for sure. You don't want to eat the whole thing yourself.
No, man, got to get a doggy bag for sure. Going to be taking that baby home. But Rosser Sutherland, appreciate you checking out the show. Kelly Mitchell, Mark, we go back to him. He wanted to mention, we were talking about Brooks County Lowndes. Brooks County Thomasville. Kelly Mitchell said, we really needed our running game last season versus Thomasville. Chris Cole definitely missed that game. Mark, I had forgotten about that he was not in that game against Thomasville. Of course, now Chris Cole has graduated, Mark, so he's not going to be available. Boy, that's a huge void for Brooks County. But, they obviously, as you mentioned earlier, still got a lot of weapons, but that's pretty interesting comment there from Kelly Mitchell.
Well, kids in Brooks County they want to be a Trojan. They keep all those kids in the county. Brooks County is going to be fine. That'll be a great game. And look, I also didn't want to leave out Worth County, my hometown. Jeff Hammond's done a great job there. In fact, I'll be talking to him tomorrow. Worth County could make a run this year.
Yeah, without a doubt. So Obadiah Farley, speaking of Worth County, Mark, Obadiah Farley says, do you honestly believe Worth County should be ranked higher than Thomasville? Well, listen, Worth County is going to bring back one of the state's best quarterback in Lyndon Worthy. You got all kind of weapons for Worth County. Yeah, I think Worth County is definitely going to be a team to watch this year. Now, are they better than Thomasville? I don't know. I think we do.
The Rams are back, I think. I think the Rams are back.
Mark just chimed right in there, yeah.
Well, look, I'm going to have a chance to go there tomorrow. I know over the past couple of years they've got their facilities have been upgraded. That community seems to be energized about the team. Feels like old times. And did you know, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Worth County prevented Charlie Ward from ever winning a state championship. I think Worth County.
I did not know that.
I think. I'm sure people in the chat can fill us in on that, but I almost believe that's true. And of course, while we're talking about teams and the opportunity who can win and who can lose, and the big thing everyone wants to talk about, Phil, I'm sure, the new transfer rules in the state of Georgia.
Yes.
Because let's face it, every year, a lot of teams will get kids, transfers, move-ins, whatever you want to call them. Bottom line is, you got new faces on the team. It happens every single year. I applaud the GHSA for coming out with these new rules. I think they're very clear cut. I don't think there's any gray area there. I don't envy the GHSA in trying to get a hold of this, if you will. But I do think enforcing it is probably going to be a little difficult. There's a lot of teams, a lot of players transferring. I'm sure that you're going to get a lot of coaches and players. They hear something, they're going to contact the GHSA. They're probably going to have to hire more people to see if they can enforce this transfer rule and find out all the information about these players. But Phil, I know we should talk about that. Give me your thoughts on the new transfer rules of the GHSA.
Well, Mark, first of all, let's remind everybody, the GHSA had the meeting and they came out with some pretty, what I would say, shocking some bylaws that they passed. Now it's got to undergo a second round of voting, which is just kind of a formality, but we were one of the first to really exploit these new set of rules. And I tell you, the type of feedback and engagement we got was really overwhelming. And we appreciate everybody for checking in. It's obviously, and I say that to say, Mark, this is obviously a hot button topic, and a lot of people have an opinion about transfer. I think this is probably the one thing that has nagged on everybody as far as high school football. And I think people, to a man, feel like that it was high time that something was done, Mark. So I did want to get that and put that out there. And for anybody that's missed it, which many of you have not, you can go to the ITG Next Facebook page or our Instagram page, and you can take a look at the story the very brief story I wrote about this that kind of outlines, again, in a brief form, kind of what took place from the GHSA. So to answer your question, Mark, I really like the fact that the GHSA has put some teeth into trying to enforce these transfer rules. Now, I know you got some questions. You and I talked about this late last week, and you feel like that there are some things in here that I maybe kind of find a gray area when it comes to trying to prove a bona fide move and trying to enforce it, in that trying to, again, prove that utilities have been shut off at one location, at the old location, and then have been turned on at the new location. And you made a good point. You said, well, what about people that have, I guess dual residences? I know that's a little bit of a concern of yours, right?
Well, I just think there's a lot of different things that'll come up as we get into this. Now, from my understanding, Phil, am I correct? This year, you're playing with who you have. This goes into effect for next year.
That is correct. Yes.
So I do think there'll be things that will come up. Speaking of what you said, let's just say I do want to send my athlete, my child, to a different school, and I can afford to have another residence somewhere. From the way I read that, they're saying, well, look, you're going to have to leave that residence. You're not going to be able to maintain to. And then when I read it, I think it said the residence that you declare a homestead exemption in would be the one that they would look at.
Yep.
Well, what if you don't own a home? What if you have an apartment? What if you decide to get? I just think there are things that you could run into, and we all know these situations are going to pop up. I mean, they do every year, but I do believe that could be one. I also believe that what about private schools? How does this impact a private school? I'm assuming they can still bring players in from wherever they choose because they're not pulling from a specific geographic area. Do you read it that way?
Yeah, I do. And that's just one of the several stipulations, Mark. That I think a lot of people are questioning about these new bylaws. Now, let's look at the bigger picture, Mark. And look, we know Dr. Robin Hines. We know the job that he has done. We got to remember that before Robin Hines took over, the GHSA was perilously close to being taken over by the Georgia legislature. I don't know if you remember that or not, but there were some Georgia lawmakers who were threatening to actually take over the GHSA because it had gotten to such a sorry condition. Now, Dr. Robin Hines comes in, he's named executive director, and he's done a well of a job of getting the association cleaned up, and in my opinion, is one of the best in the United States as far as governing high school student athletes, Mark. Now, having said that, I think that transfer situation was still one of those outliers that a lot of people just didn't care for. They felt like that there were a lot of schools, right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm just talking about the perception, that a lot of schools were taking advantage of the transfer situation. So there's one thing for sure now, Mark, moving forward. If indeed these rules hold up, if indeed this passes a second round of voting, which it will, I think this is going to be a game changer, Mark, in what schools are able to do and what they're not able to do. At least it's going to be, at least that the line is going to be a little tighter than it's ever been.
It's going to change the landscape some. I don't think you're just easily going to be able to go from one program to the next. I'm in the 10th grade. I think I'm going to play here my 11th grade year. I'm going to go play my last year somewhere. I do think it will impact the way people approach that, but I think this ball is rolling. You see it in college, and they're trying to get that under control some. I think if you want to send your kid to a different school, you're going to find a way to do that. It's going to eliminate like the easy way, if you will, to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
You're going to have to jump through some hoops, but for people that are determined, if you will, to have their kid play for a different program, then they're going to find a way to do it. I think I mentioned to you, and we see it happen now. I think you're going to find these higher profile programs in Georgia, they will want to make themselves appealing to 7th and 8th graders. They're going to look, we already see 8th graders getting offers from D1 colleges.
Yep.
Big time D1 colleges. So I think what you'll begin to see is let's make sure that these athletes know about our program, because the way I understand it, you leave the 8th grade, you can go play where you choose to play. I think you're going to see a lot of that going on. I think be very careful if you send your child leaving middle school from the 8th grade to the 9th grade. Pick a program that you feel good about, even if the coach leaves. Easier said than done. But I do think you're going to see coaches, programs just make themselves appealing to these younger kids. I also think if you have a very talented athlete and maybe you aren't happy with the school system they're in, well, you're probably already thinking about that when your kids in the 7th or 8th grade. In other words, should we go somewhere else? And I think I mentioned several weeks ago about the young man who's leaving the 8th grade, supposedly like the number one quarterback for his class already. If I'm not mistaken, he may have been from Louisiana, but he's going to California. He was offered money to play, but he turned down the options that were paying him and has elected to go to a program because of a coach and the mentorship that he feels he can get.
Wow.
Looking at the long range plan is, hey, I want to put myself in a good position in college. I can make some money in college, but the big prize is to go to the NFL and be able to compete there. I do think, again, it's good. It's going to cut out, hey, I think I'll move across town with my uncle. It'll stop that if it's enforced to the letter of the law, and you got to have enough personnel to enforce it. I don't think there'll be any shortage of people getting turned in. I mean, look, if I'm on a team and I'm coaching a team and I know the other team has somebody that I feel like has violated these rules, well, you turn them in. You turn them in and say, hey, this isn't right. We all should play by the same rules here. So I think there's a lot of different ways this thing could go. It's interesting, in a lot of states view it different. In Florida, you can pretty much go play anywhere, anytime, just about. There's not a whole lot of consequences in Florida. I mean, a lot of leeway in Florida. Now I think this will put Georgia as a state to where, okay, it's going to be more difficult. And then what do you do if you're a private school? I guess you can still get whoever you so choose. And a lot of people will say, well, that's not fair. Why can they have people move and play at their program when now we can't do that?
What, to my private schools?
Yes, private schools.
Yeah, well, I mean, they completely different govern. I mean, they govern themselves. They have their own separate association. So,
they do, but they play against public schools.
Sure.
Yeah.
But only in the regular season.
Yeah.
When it comes down to the playoffs. But so, Mark, but I want to go back to and this struck me last week when we talked about this, because I think you've hit it, you've hit the nail on the head here. Okay. And I want to make sure everybody understands what Mark was saying, because, we've been talking about a lot. But Mark, let's go back through it. What you're saying, Mark, and what you're proposing, the thing that would eliminate any kind of questioning about, is this player making a bona fide move, whatever. What you're saying is, hey, if you got a player you want to, there's a player that that you like, and if the player loves the school, then that's got to happen early on, 7th, 8th grade. Get that player locked in, get the family locked in, so that you don't have to go through this mess later on down the road. He said, she said, trying to prove this, trying to make sure the parents on the birth certificate, what have you. What you're saying is, let's see if we can find a mutual agreement at a younger age between the school and the student athlete and the family.
That's correct. And if I'm not mistaken, Georgia passed the NIL rule several years ago when when Juju was maybe a freshman, the rumor was he was going to leave Georgia. In fact, I know that for a fact because he was going to go to California, and I actually
That's right.
talked to the people at the school in California where he was going to go. I think, Phil, what are you going to do now when you see, for example, my child has really blossomed and is a very talented player going into their junior year. Here I am. I can't really move to put my kid in what I think is a better position for him to prepare himself for college. I think I'm just going to leave and go to Florida and put him in a school there, or go to another state. Are we going to see some people leave Georgia because of this? For 100%, you're going to have a little of that for sure.
Yeah, that's something I really haven't thought about, Mark. Certainly, that's definitely going to be a possibility. I think it'll be the exception versus the norm, though, Mark. But it is going to be interesting. Yeah, and listen, we talk about Florida. Let's face it, Mark. The what's happening in Florida and the wild, wild west mentality, as I like to call it. This is the whole reason, in my opinion, that Georgia has decided to clamp down, to put some teeth into these transfer rules because of what has happened in Florida and what Florida was transpired and what Florida has turned into. And I think you had some people, Mark, in Georgia that said, hey, we don't want to become Florida, because I think some people saw it going in that direction.
Well, I agree. In having been to quite a few programs in Florida and being in South Florida, literally you have one program that has enough talent to win a state championship one year and enough kids that if they choose to stay can have a huge impact on that program. Well, they all will leave and go to a different program.
Yeah.
It really is difficult to maintain. And it's like in college, you got to recruit your players. Really, you have to recruit. The transfer portal, they can leave you, so you have to recruit them. It's like that all over Florida, and especially down in South Florida. There's a wealth of talent there. There's some kids that play at 4 different high schools, 4 different years. Which is extreme. But
go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, but it makes it difficult to try to maintain any sense of consistency because the kids just follow where their friends go, or where my uncle tells me to go, so to speak, or getting or for lack of a better word, shop your kid around, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and you're right. You can go to some of the kids in Florida. You can go to their personal sites on X or Instagram, and especially on X. And you'll have a young man, I should say, or a young lady, but mostly it's high school football players. You'll see where in Florida ninth grade they had one school, 10th grade they had another school, 11th grade they had another school, and then senior. It's almost like college is what it reminded me of. It almost was like college recruits. Hey, I'm proud to proclaim that 2025, Tattenville Green High School will be my new home for my senior season. And I just thought, this is crazy, So I think exactly Georgia saw it going in that direction, and there were some folks who stepped up and said, hey, we don't want to become that. I applaud Georgia and the folks who really decided to take some action, Mark, and move Georgia in this direction of trying to better enforce these transfer rules. Now, some people are saying they went overboard. Okay, and what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, look, I agree they had to do something. At the end of the day, high school should be about education first and foremost. That's part of the problem today is everyone's losing sight of that. As soon as these high school kids start getting paid, and if I'm not mistaken, they can already get paid.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah, they can already get paid. So it's not a matter of if, it's just when you have X high school's booster club will pay a few players to come there. That's going to happen. How do you deal with that? And that'll happen even if you target someone in the 8th grade. Hey, we'd love to have your son come play in our program. We think he has a bright future. We're going to pay X amount of dollars. So it'll start happening at that level. And then the question will be, well, do you do something there? But look, I'm an old school guy. I wish everybody would play where they grow up, right? Where you live, you grow up with your friends, you play, and you stay there.
Yes.
Boy, those days are long gone. It just has changed, and I do think it's good. I think they're going to spend a lot of hours enforcing these rules for sure.
All right, so Mark, for those that may have missed it, here's a quick recap, and I'm going to the story that we had posted last week. So, in case you're wondering exactly what all's involved, so it's the crackdown on transfers. The story, our story is titled "We Knew This Would Happen at Some Point, and Now It's Coming." So, the GHSA will now require the schools of any student athlete that wants to transfer. You got to do the following. You got to produce copies of your driver's license, lease agreements, and utility bills, proving the family's move from the previous address to the new address. This is to ensure what we all hear and know as a bona fide move, right? So think about that. Driver's license, lease agreements, not really any different from the way it has been. I think any new student that comes into a school system has got to produce some or all of that anyway, right, Mark?
Correct. Yeah, I don't think that's any different. I think the big deal is the birth certificate, and are you making that bona fide move? You can't go live with a relative or a friend, and they're going to really sounds like they're going to verify all that information. They're not just going to hey, I'm going to live with my father. My mother and father divorced. I'm going to go live with my father. I still think you'll run into that some. How do you handle that? Parents are divorced. Both of them are on the birth certificate. Oh, okay. Well, they get together and say, well, okay, my son's been living with me, but now, he's going to live, with the other parent, and that parent just maybe has moved to a new location or is already living there. I still think you're going to run into some things.
And that you're talking about is the next clause in this change in the bylaws. It's what I call the Jake Garcia rule. Mark, and it describes what you just mentioned. We all remember when Jake Garcia went from, I'm trying to remember what school. Jake Garcia had moved around a good bit. Great man, great young man, great family. Got to know Randy Garcia, the father, and Jake. They were good people. But we remember they got caught up in the move from, I guess it was it in Cali? Now, where was it? It was the move to Valdosta, I think. But you remember it got to a situation where the Garcias divorced, and so Jake went to live with his father. He was previously living with his mother. So now, that's what I call the Jake Garcia rule. So now, if a student athlete moves from one parent's residence to another parent's residence in another school district, both parents must appear on the student's birth certificate. This is probably the one clause, Mark, that's getting more attention and creating more of an argument, I think, than anything.
Well, this may bring some parents that didn't get along prior to this may, who knows, they may start talking again.
That's right? A good point. That's a great point.
You know what? Hey, I want to go play football over here. Mom lives over here. I know I've been living with you, but I'm going to move over there, and hey, you know what? Our child has an opportunity to do big things. Maybe they just go ahead and move, and they're both on the birth certificate. That's the key.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if some people will take that to an extreme and just go ahead and get a, quote, divorce and one of them move, because that's on the up and up. Then they just happen to get remarried when the kid graduates.
And finally, and again, this goes back, and to me, this targets the Florida rule. You can see that every one of these has got some connection to past discretions, Mark, that we've seen and we've heard about, we've ran into, right? So here's what I call the Florida rule. Any student athlete, this is Georgia, of course, any student athlete that transfers twice after the 9th grade will be ineligible for 1 year. Thus, will have to sit out for a year. Now, look, and I'm not going to call it in the end, but there's a number of high-profile student athletes, Mark, in Georgia right now who have, under the new rule, would have had to sit out a year.
So when you say transfer twice, I'm in the 9th grade. I go to a different school. 10th grade, that's one transfer. Then I decide to go to a different school. Now I got to sit out there because that's number 2. Is that correct?
Well, it's number 2, but it's the third school.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yes.
Third school.
So I encourage everybody not to really concentrate on the number of transfers, but the number of schools that he or she has attended. So let's say, again, you're at school A to start the 9th grade. You move to another school for the 10th grade. That's 2 schools, okay? And then you make another subsequent move from 10th to 11th grade. That's your third school. That would necessitate sitting out a year. And again, that's what we go back to. And we're talking about the Florida similarities, where kids are going to 3 or even sometimes 4 different schools, Mark, in their 4-year high school career.
Well, I don't think that's good. I don't think that's good for anyone to move around like that. That's a bit much. But here's the big question, Phil. Who is this rule going to impact the most? What schools are going to have to huddle up and go, hey, all right, we're not going to be the same program. What do we do? Who will it impact the most? And look, logic tells you, I said, like if you're in South Georgia, like even getting outside of Warner Robins, there's not as many, you're just not moving here, or you're not moving around just because population wise, there's just not as many people. There's not as many schools. It's obviously going to impact a town. Certainly Atlanta's a given, where you have so many schools close together. Even like a Warner Robins, where there's 5 schools there that they could that someone could go to. Who will it impact the most? I think that's now what you have to look at. And now what will teams do? As I mentioned before, I think you reach down in the middle school and try to, if that's the kind of program you're running, of, hey, we're going to run this top-notch program. We want to attract the best talent. Then you start looking down to middle school. But it is going to change the landscape some for certain teams. Would you not agree with that?
100%. 100%. So, well, all right. So, guys,
let me ask you this. One other quick question. I mentioned like a kid, hey, what if you just move out of the state? You do whatever you want. What if you get a transfer from a different state? Does that same rule apply? Are they saying, well, we got to go to that state? And I'm saying this bordering states. For example, in Columbus, you have Phoenix City right on the border. They're coming. If you leave Alabama and come to a school in Columbus, are they going to go then now to Alabama? If, I guess if you look at the rules, they're going to go. I don't guess it matters where you're coming from.
Yeah, I don't think it matters in state or out of state. The way I interpret.
But would they go back and look? Now I get if they say, well, you're in Phoenix City and you just drove across the bridge. I mean, what if you come a long way? What if you come from, for example, South Florida to a school? Are they going to go look now down to Miami and see where you lived or what you did there?
I tell you, those are good questions. I do want to mention this, Mark. I mentioned Robin Hines earlier, the former executive director for the GHSA. I've noticed that Dr. Hines, is really been very active in answering a lot of the questions that we're getting on our social media, especially our Facebook pages. So some of these questions, I'm going to reach out to Dr. Hines and see if he might be willing to address some of these. Now, even though Dr. Hines is not in the position of executive director, he still is associated, Mark, with the GHSA, I think in an advisor's role. So I may reach out to him. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I was just going to say he'd probably be doing a lot of advising because I'm sure there, as with anything else, this is new. There's going to be some issues. There's going to be some ways you try to skirt around it. But I do think, people will adapt. Schools will adapt. Families will adapt. I do believe it's going to eliminate, if they in fact enforce it, it's going to eliminate just quote the easy moving around that we've seen.
Yes. So, Mark, we got a few minutes left to go in the show. I didn't know if you want to maybe close the show with a couple of questions from our viewers.
Sounds good to me.
So, Mark, let's tackle this. Obadiah Farley says, I got a question for Phil. We'll make this a question for Phil and Mark. Name the top five. And, Mark, this kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier. Again, Mark raised in Sylvester, the heart of southern Georgia. So we're going to both answer this one, Obadiah. Got a question, says Obadiah. Name the top five South Georgia teams that you think are going to do good this year. And I would say that's regardless of classification. I'm going to go with Colquitt. Go ahead, Mark.
Do good or win a championship.
I think that was kind of what I was thinking. But let's say teams that will have a chance to win a championship. Let's put it that way.
I think there's, again, I mentioned many. Lowndes, Colquitt, Valdosta, Clinch, Brooks, Worth, Thomas County Central, Thomasville, Ware.
Yes. Here's mine: Colquitt, Brooks, Clinch, Worth, Valdosta, Thomas County Central. So, Obadiah, I hope that answers your question. There's a bunch of them. By the way, we can close with this if you want to. And we've kind of come full circle, Mark, and it'll be kind of where we started. So we started off talking about season openers, right?
That's right.
All right. So one of the season openers that our guy Flint, who, by the way, doing a great job for us here at ITG Next, Flint, has been kind of an extension from what I had started off doing about these season openers. Flint is kind of taking some of these additional games, season openers. I know that he posted the Valdosta Tucker season open. Now, Valdosta, I think, won this one last year, 62-19. But really the bigger point here, Mark, is not so much the game, but I think it's about Valdosta. I think Valdosta will defeat Tucker, but I just think that Valdosta is going to be a little tougher than everybody's giving them credit. Let me tell you why. Valdosta loses Todd Robinson, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people thought, well, there go the Cats. You are as your quarterback goes. Of course, that's one of my favorite sayings. But I think in this case, and look, I've been saying this for a while, Mark. I think Valdosta they possess some of the best talent and skill position players from top to bottom. And you got to remember, last year Valdosta started mostly sophomores, juniors, and this year you're going to have a lot more sophomores, juniors. Well, a lot of those guys will be seniors, of course. But I'm telling you, and I wrote up the Valdosta football preview last night. And, Mark, it was one of those things. I had this illumination. As soon as I finished writing it, I thought, oh, boy. If you're a Valdosta fan, you got a lot to look forward to this year. Mark, I'm telling you, they are going to have – Shelton Felton is going to have one of the most talented teams, I think, in the state this year.
As I mentioned, he's done a great job there, given what he had to come into. I think he's weathered the storm, and Valdosta, the ship is going in the right direction.
Yes.
I mean, look, it typically takes a year or so, pretty much, for any new coach to get their system in, to get acclimated, to get everybody on their page. But given what he came into, it's probably taken more, for sure. There's just no question about that. So I'm sure Valdosta will be in great shape. I think the Wintersville game this year will be, of course, that game's always crazy. What a special game. But I agree. I think Valdosta will have an opportunity to make some noise.
Mike Sorensen, counting down last few comments we got here. Mike Sorensen, big Tiff County fan. He's a friend of mine. Mike Sorensen's got to represent. Let's go Tiff County Blue Devils. Now, Mark, I'm not saying that Tiff County's in the same conversation for we're talking about state championships. I think they've got a ways to go, but what a job Jeff Littleton has done to lift that program up.
Well, I think everybody wants to see how they'll do this year. There's talent in all these areas in South Georgia. It'll be interesting to see how they do. I'd like to see. He's been successful everywhere he's been. There's no reason to think that he won't be at Tiff County.
Robert Tallert says, go Peach County, Trojans, and Coach Westbrook. There's another one, Mark, Coach Maurice Westbrook. Boy, we saw what he did during his time at Warner Robins. And now, of course, he's over at Peach County, taking over for Chad Campbell there. So I think those are a couple of teams to watch. Mark, we'll give you the final word here, just kind of in a nutshell. Your thoughts on the high school football season. We're getting closer and closer. We got a lot of great things down the pipeline coming here at ITG Next, don't we?
Let's enjoy this year. It's obviously going to change a little bit next year with this new transfer rule. I'm sure there's a lot of teams that have rallied and said, hey, let's make it happen. Let's get a championship this year. Next year, things may be a little bit different. I think the landscape will keep changing some. NIL will be a factor at some point.
Yeah.
Let's enjoy this year, and let's make it happen this year.
I do want to say, so I know the Fowlers, their son Michael, I think I had mentioned him as a 2028 class player. He's actually 2029. That's a name to keep an eye on, a young man to keep an eye on. He's an up-and-coming, a rising freshman quarterback. And, Mark, we'll close with this, and we'll move on our way. But this is the thing that gets me, Mark. This is starting to be a great time for a lot of eighth graders. You know, it used to be where you had to bide your time and you had to pay your dues. And don't get me wrong, you still have to do that. But, Mark, we're starting to see, like Michael Fowler at Colquitt County, you know, he's going to compete for some playing time this year as a true freshman. You got Cohen Lawson, who was a freshman last year and was the starting quarterback for Colquitt. Now, he got injured, but he still played a good bit of the time last year for Sean Calhoun. I just think that we're starting to see more and more of that. Coach Boone, Mark, at Northside Warner Robins, is looking at starting a true freshman at quarterback for him this year. He was an eighth grader playing in the spring game, started the game there against Mount Zion Jonesboro. So we'll kind of close with this, and I want to get your thoughts on that, Mark. These players, younger and younger, not being dismissed by coaches like they used to be. Hey, if they can play, if they got the talent, then by golly, they're thrusting them in to action right away. Again, I'll give you the final word. Get your thoughts on that. I think it's pretty interesting.
Well, it's a different world today. You got to think about it. These kids now are being trained as young as 10 years old. They're getting quarterback coaches at age 10.
Yep.
And they're playing competitively, obviously, during the, quote, Pee Wee League of football season. Right. And then you move on up into middle school. They're traveling. Some people have the financial means to send their kid to camps all over the country.
Right.
They are competing with various 7-on-7 teams. They're getting the best weight training, the best coaching. So when you think about it along those lines, Yes, they are a true freshman, but they are very well prepared. A lot of these kids are. As one guy told me, I said, well, we're talking about the very same thing. I was in another state. This kid was starting freshman for a high profile team. He said he's a trained assassin. He's been getting the training from quarterback coaches to weight trainers, from physical therapy, from everything you can think of, even a psychological coach. Been getting all that from like age 10, 8 or 9 or 10, all the way up through middle school. So you're seeing these kids are very mature now. Not surprising at all.
I got you. Mike Sorensen, enjoyed the show, Phil and Mark. Guys, I want to thank y'all for checking out the show. I want to thank everybody for the engagement. Mark, thank you for your input, your opinion. Always having a great time talking high school football with you. And look forward to talking next week, even more high school football.
Sounds good. Enjoyed it, Phil.
Yeah, same here, Mark. Guys, thank y'all for checking in with us. We'll be back next week, same time, same bat channel, right here at ITG Next, 5:30 to around 6:30-ish, or whenever we get ready to wrap things up. But we hope that you will be with us. Remember, now, this is just a small part of what we do this 1 hour. Guys, you can keep up with us 24/7, 365 at all of our platforms. ITG Next. Be sure to like and share the show. Be sure to like and share our content, our stories. That certainly helps us here at ITG Next, and we would greatly appreciate it. Until next week, you guys have a great day, have a great week, and we'll talk